You built this? The Langford tech lead had asked me a few months ago, half smiling, half incredulous. He wasn't the first. People always looked twice when I told them I hadn't gone to MIT, or Caltech, or anywhere with ivy on the walls. No degree. No diploma. Just a stack of coffee-stained notebooks, a few thousand unpaid hours, and the kind of late-night obsession that doesn't look impressive on a resume, but runs deeper than any line of code. And it worked. God, it worked. The pipeline I'd designed cut Langford's ingestion latency by 60%, dropped their AWS bill by a third, and gave them visibility into live anomaly spikes their current vendor couldn't touch. They were practically drooling. All I had to do was get us through one more pitch, and the deal was ours. At Strataton, I was technically the lead data solutions engineer, but no one said that out loud unless they were reading a slide deck. Most just called me the builder or the girl in dev. I didn't mind. I wasn't there for applause. I was there because I'd built something real, something elegant. And deep down, I think they all knew that without me, they'd still be screwing around with half-baked prototypes and vendor fluffware. But I wasn't blind. I saw the shift happening the minute Chad walked in. He strutted into our Monday sync like it was a Shark Tank audition. Expensive watch, tight haircut, smile that didn't reach his eyes. VP of Strategic Client Engagement. The CEO announced, like we were all supposed to stand and clap. No one did. Chad had just finished some fast-track MBA program and interned at his dad's hedge fund last summer. Now he was here to tighten the narrative and own the room during the Langford bid. That's when the pit opened in my stomach. I'd seen this story before. He skimmed my work like it was a restaurant menu, made comments about simplifying the visuals and rebalancing the delivery. Then he pointed to the demo flow I'd spent 4 weeks tuning and said, "This is great, but I'll take over for the actual pitch. We need someone polished to lead." I kept my mouth shut. That was mistake number 1. Hey, quick pause. I know 97% of people watch these stories without subscribing. But if this one grips you even a little, hit that like button and subscribe. It keeps the team going. Okay, back to it. The days leading up to the final pitch were tense, but I kept doing what I do, testing, refining, quietly making sure everything would run like it should. The Langford pipeline was my baby. Every off handshake, every rollback contingency, every salt-locked credential. I knew where it all lived. I'd even built in graceful degradation layers in case Chad fumbled the timing, which of course he would. Still, I didn't fight him. I let him take the slide deck, let him strut into the prep call, let him flash his blinding smile while mispronouncing data lake. I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd surprise me. Maybe he'd just stick to the script and let the product shine. But that was mistake number 2. He wasn't interested in the product. He was interested in the spotlight. The closer we got to pitch day, the more he talked over me, ignored me. When I flagged potential issues with his reordered demo flow, he smirked and said, "Don't worry. I've done plenty of investor decks." Investor decks. For a system with 4 live microservices and a licensing heartbeat that pings every 10 minutes. Idiot. The morning of the demo, I arrived early, triple-checked the endpoints, confirmed license syncs, staged the output files. Everything was perfect. The Langford CTO, same guy who'd asked if I'd built it, was on the call. I saw him glance at me through the video tile, then tilt his head when he realized I wasn't leading. Chad opened with a joke about Harvard. I wanted to crawl through the fiber line and disconnect the whole damn session. And then he did it. Midway through my segment, after I'd set up the baseline metrics and handed off to the live engine, he raised his hand and said, "Actually, I'll take it from here." He walked across the room, put his hand on my laptop like he owned it and said, "A Harvard grad should present the $70 million proposal, not some self-taught programmer." Then he clicked. The engine froze. The interface glitched. And the system, which had just needed 10 more seconds of staging time, collapsed in front of everyone. Not one word from me. Not one sound. Just silence. And the sinking feeling that everything I'd built had just been dragged off a cliff by a man who didn't know which button not to press. The day they made it official, I was debugging a session timeout issue with the load balancer, something I'd warned them about 3 sprints ago. I had my headphones in, music low, head down, when the company-wide ping hit Slack like a brick. Please welcome Chad Whitmore as VP of Strategic Client Engagement. Excited to have this rising star lead our Langford push. Fireworks emoji. Champagne bottle. A photo of him in a tailored navy suit. Arms crossed like he just closed a 10-figure merger. I stared at the screen for a long second. VP? I hadn't even known the role existed. It didn't yesterday. Then I glanced at the timestamp. 9:04 a.m. Our final Langford demo was in 4 days. It didn't take a genius to do the math. They'd created the role just in time for Chad to stand on a stage he hadn't built. He was in my office an hour later. No knock, just waltzed in like he owned the damn building. Hey partner, he said, grinning, using that fake familiar tone certain men use when they're about to rob you of something and want you to smile while it happens. Let's tighten up the flow. I'll kick off the demo and steer the core messaging. You'll handle the technical flavor, right? I blinked. Flavor? Yeah, like make it feel real, but not too deep in the weeds. Langford's board doesn't want to be bored to death by packet headers and thread timing. He clapped me on the shoulder. Let the Harvard kid sell it. You keep the engine purring. My fingers itched. I could have said it right then. Could have told him the flavor was a triple authenticated real-time stream parser with dynamic failover, not a garnish. That if he touched the sequence out of order, the whole demo would hang because we hadn't yet deployed the retry cache to prod. But I didn't. I nodded. That was mistake number 3. That afternoon, I brought it up to the CEO, Bill Whitmore, also known as Dad in Chad circles. I kept it professional. Explained the risk of swapping presenters this late. How the architecture walkthrough required someone who understood the build order. His answer? A slow, patient sigh and the words, "It's optics, Mason. Be a team player." Optics. Like I was a smudge on the glass they were trying to polish. I went back to my desk. Sat there a full 10 minutes, staring at my terminal, not typing. The same code I'd written. The engine Chad now wanted to parade like a trophy was still open in front of me. My code. My logic. The thing that even Langford's internal dev team couldn't replicate without my input. And yet, here I was, being told to sit quietly in the corner like the office pet with a neat trick. The shift was quiet, but it was seismic. They stopped inviting me to prep calls. Moved calendar invites from my name to Chad's. A week ago, I was logging runtime telemetry for the demo build. Now I was being CC'd on slide reviews with notes like, "Let's make the tech feel more digestible." I was becoming a ghost in my own project. The final straw came the night before the pitch. I'd stayed late to polish the logging outputs and scrub dead error states from the UI. Chad walked in carrying takeout and a Red Bull, dumped both on my desk and said, "Let's do a dry run my way." I watched as he skipped the environment boot, ignored the token authentication sequence, and forced a hard load on the presentation layer. He smirked when it didn't crash. See? Easy. That was mistake number 4. And it wasn't mine. The demo room smelled like stale coffee and overconfidence. I'd been up since 4 a.m., triple-checking everything. Auth keys synced, heartbeat pings responding, license server confirmed. Langford Systems had their entire senior tech board on the call, including their CTO, Rachel Lynn, a woman whose quiet standards could make or break your quarter. The kind of client you build a legacy around. I took a deep breath, steadied my hands over the laptop, and began. "Good morning, everyone," I said, clicking to the first live feed. What you're about to see is a real-time ingestion of synthetic data across 6 independent endpoints. No delay, no preload. The numbers appeared instantly. Smooth. Clean. Even the Langford CFO leaned in closer to his screen, whispering something like, "That's impressive." I could feel the room leaning my way. The kind of silence that means you've caught their attention. For 3 glorious minutes, everything worked exactly as it should. No lag. No warnings. Just pure flow. My voice was steady, confident. Alive in a way it hadn't been for months. This was mine. Then Chad cleared his throat. Loudly. "Actually," he said, stepping forward like he was about to unveil a magic trick. "Let me jump in here for a sec." I froze. We agreed I'd handle the engine segment. He smirked, that MBA shine oozing through his fake charm. "A Harvard grad should be handling this, don't you think?" he said, glancing at the Langford execs like we were all sharing a private joke. And before I could react, he reached across the table and grabbed my laptop. My laptop. The one tied to the demo environment. The one with the signed session key that only I could renew. He clicked. Once. Twice. Too fast. Then hit run. The system hung. For a split second, the progress bar moved. Then froze at 2%. The cursor blinked. Nothing. I watched the color drain from Rachel Lynn's face. On her end of the call, she leaned forward, squinting. Is it supposed to take this long? She asked. Chad forced a chuckle. Just loading the cache layer. He hit enter again. The screen turned gray. Then came the fatal line. Runtime exception. Missing staging key signature. Dead silence. The kind that makes your ears ring. He tried again, fumbling through the keyboard shortcuts like someone trying to defuse a bomb with mittens on. The platform's auto protection kicked in and terminated the live session. Security breach detected. I wanted to look away, but I couldn't. Years of sleepless nights, testing, tuning, documenting every failover, reduced to a frozen window and a man too arrogant to listen. Rachel muted her mic for a moment, spoke quietly to someone off-screen, then came back with a polite, clipped tone. We'll need to reschedule, she said. Thank you for your time. The Langford call dropped. Just like that. Chad's smile cracked. He turned to me desperate. Can you fix this? I didn't move. Didn't speak. The room was ice cold. The CEO tried to smooth it over with corporate nonsense. Minor technical hiccup. Just an environment issue. But it didn't matter. Everyone saw it. Everyone knew who broke it. As they filed out, I sat there staring at the blank monitor, its reflection cutting across my face. The system wasn't the only thing that had frozen. Something inside me had too. Because in that moment I realized this wasn't about failure. It was about being erased in real time. And they'd just done it on camera. The call came at 7:46 p.m. I was still at my desk, staring blankly at the frozen frame of the demo screen. The room around me was dark except for the blue glow from the monitor. I hadn't moved in an hour. I'd replayed the crash a dozen times in my head, counting every step Chad had skipped, every layer he'd broken through like a child slamming buttons on a locked elevator panel. And then my phone rang. Rachel Lynn's name appeared. I answered on the third ring. Her voice was low and flat. It's dead. I didn't ask what she meant. They just called, she continued. Our board watched the full recording. They saw who was talking and who wasn't. Saw who ignored staging protocols, who broke security barriers, who fumbled the engine into oblivion. I swallowed hard. I'm sorry. Don't be, she said. You were right to keep your concerns on record. I read your notes, by the way. The ones you appended to the staging doc. Nice work. There was a pause. Listen, she said carefully. They're going to call you. Stratton. Probably Chad. Maybe even his father. They'll beg. Don't answer. Let them drown in their own arrogance for a while. She hung up. And just like that, my spine uncurled. Not from relief. From clarity. I didn't rage. Didn't scream. I just sat there. I opened the original contract I'd signed with Stratton 5 years ago. The version before the acquisition. The one no one ever updated because they didn't think I was important enough. Clause 14.4. Be proprietary runtime licensing and revocation rights. Clause 9.1. Termination of access without prior notice in case of contractual breach. Clause 7.3. Personal cryptographic signature required for deployment beyond demo environment. They'd built the engine on my code. My architecture. My runtime modules, distributed via licensed server under my name. No one, not Chad, not his father, not even their legal team, had ever formalized full transfer rights. Because no one thought I mattered. I started typing. Not code this time. Just notes. Precise, dated, calm. I drafted a revocation notice for the runtime key license, paused it just before the send. Then I toggled over to the license manager, unchecked the auto-renew box for their demo instance. Effective in 72 hours. Let them try another demo. At 8:32, I got my first message from Stratton's comms director. Can you send over a quick blurb explaining the technical issue for our PR team? I didn't reply. At 9:04, Chad himself texted, "Hey, rough day. Let's debrief tomorrow? No hard feelings." Still nothing from me. At 9:27, my access to the Langford Slack channel was revoked. At 9:33, I was pulled from the pitch project board entirely. Not a word. No explanation. Just disappeared from the roster like I was never there. I sat in the dark and let it happen. But something had shifted. They thought they'd erased me. They thought this would go down as a tech hiccup, blamed on a system glitch and a miscue. They forgot I built the system. And now I was about to show them what it meant to own something. Really own it. When the license says revocable at will. It's a strange thing, pulling the pin without flinching. There's no dramatic music, no thunderclap. Just quiet keystrokes and the kind of surgical focus you only learn from being ignored too long. By the time I reached the old contract addendum, version 3.2, last signed during a holiday sprint no one but me stayed late for, I already knew exactly where the clause lived. Section 8.7, C developer retains rights to terminate access to proprietary modules if material breach of project terms is observed, including but not limited to exclusion from live production, demo, or public-facing representation without written consent. Chad hadn't just stolen my moment. He'd triggered a material breach. I opened the license admin panel. Quiet, anonymous, accessed through a legacy dev shell no one bothered to deprecate after the merger. The runtime modules were still pinging my signature, just as I built them to. I toggled off the heartbeat refresh for demo instance Strataton LGFD and initiated a countdown expiry. 72 hours. After that, their demo environment wouldn't just freeze, it wouldn't boot. I wasn't sabotaging anything. I wasn't corrupting files or touching client data or wiping logs. That's what bitter people do. This wasn't bitterness. This was boundary enforcement. They were already prepping the second demo. I knew that because someone on the product team, Rachel, bless her, sent me a screenshot of the updated deck. Chad's face on slide 1. Mine nowhere. They'd changed the colors, simplified the visuals, removed every bit of code from the flowchart. Just boxes and arrows now. New face. Same product. Except it wasn't the same. I let them keep working. Let them email internal comms about the relaunch strategy. Let Chad record a second hype video where he said the phrase next-gen scalable synergy, like it meant something. Meanwhile, I documented everything. Each access log, each key request, each ping from their servers to mine. Not for revenge, for protection. Because when the crash came, and it would come, they'd try to spin it again. Pretend it was a bug, or a hiccup, or someone else's fault. I needed receipts. By the third night, the access logs showed increased activity. Someone in Strataton's dev team had cloned the repo, my repo, into a temp environment. The system let them. But only up to a point. At 2:04 a.m., they tried to push live. At 2 hours 4 minutes and 37 seconds, the signature check failed. The license hadn't expired yet, but it was beginning to groan. And I sat there, sipping cold coffee, watching the countdown tick toward 0. Not smiling. Just still. Like a door had quietly shut behind me. And for the first time in years, I didn't need to ask if I belonged in the room. I'd built the room. They just forgot whose name was still on the keys. Demo day round 2. They called it the redemption presentation, in the email blast. Sent out invites like it was a product launch, not a second chance at damage control. The header had Chad's face on it again. Clean-shaven, navy suit, toothy grin that screamed trust fund competence. Langford execs joined the Zoom 5 minutes early. I wasn't on the call, obviously. But I had ways of watching. Quiet ways. A friend in their network team pinged me. They're booting the demo. Chad's in the driver's seat again. I muted everything and leaned back in my chair. The house was quiet. My phone was face down. A slow drizzle hit the window behind me. It felt like the opening scene to a courtroom drama, only I was already halfway through the verdict. Back in the virtual boardroom, Chad launched into his intro like a TED Talk reject. Today, he said with inflated calm, we're proud to show you the full-stack integration flow rebuilt for reliability and performance. Scalable. Seamless. Ready to deploy. He clicked the button. Nothing happened. Then the screen went black. A heartbeat. Then 3 words appeared, bold and blunt across the center of the demo UI. Missing key signature. Silence. Someone on the Langford side coughed. Chad blinked, clicked again. Nothing. He tried refreshing the instance. Error screen. A second later. Unable to initialize protected modules. The CTO, Rachel, unmuted with a sigh so sharp it could have cracked the glass in the conference room. Are we going to see anything today, Mr. Whitmore? Chad stammered, muttered something about version control. Unexpected artifact conflicts. Behind him, someone whispered into a muted mic, legal, maybe. Or the CTO's assistant asking who approved the build. Langford's CFO leaned into his camera and said flatly, "This was your second attempt." No one had any answers. Meanwhile, I sat at my kitchen table with a cold cup of coffee and watched the license log light up. Their environment had tried to handshake the runtime 4 separate times. All denied. The system was behaving exactly as built, by me, bound to my signature, governed by the clauses no one bothered to review. They hadn't just cut me out. They'd left the engine without a key. And now, in front of the very client they were trying to impress, they were stuck banging on a locked door they didn't even realize needed a fingerprint. I didn't gloat. Didn't text anyone. Didn't even crack a smile. Because the truth is, real justice isn't loud. It's watching the people who thought you were replaceable learn, in full view of their own ambitions, that they were holding a shell without the pearl. The platform I built wasn't broken. It was protecting itself. From them. The call came at 6:03 p.m., after the second crash. I recognized the number before it even rang out. Direct line. CEO's cell. I let it vibrate 3 times, then answered with the kind of practice calm that only comes after you've stopped caring if someone calls you team player or difficult. "Mason," Bill Whitmore said, his voice strained and trying not to be. "Rough day, huh?" I didn't answer. He cleared his throat. "Listen, we had a little hiccup on the Langford demo. Looks like there was some kind of key issue? Maybe a credential mix-up in the staging environment." Credential mix-up. That was rich. I thought Chad was handling all that. I said, voice even. A pause. "Well, he did his best under pressure, but honestly, we could really use your help just to, get things patched. Get the build clean and stabilized. No hard feelings." He said it like I was the janitor of a mess I didn't make. I leaned back in my chair, watching the sun fall against the edge of my apartment window. The same city skyline I used to look at while working late for their deadlines, their investors, their promises. None of it felt like mine anymore. "I'm not available," I said calmly. He hesitated. "Mason, this isn't the time to play hardball. We're on the edge of losing a $70 million account." "I know," I said. Silence again. Then carefully, "Are you asking for something specific?" "No," I said. "I'm just not coming back." Another pause. Longer. He was probably doing the math. How many environments still needed my signature? How fast legal could rework the contracts? How long they could pretend this wasn't self-inflicted? "You're making a mistake," he said, finally dropping the warm tone. "I didn't yank the laptop mid-demo," I said. "I didn't lock the architect out of her own system and call it optics. I told you that was never personal." "It was always personal," I said. "You just didn't think I'd notice." He exhaled hard, somewhere between frustration and disbelief. "You won't get another opportunity like this." That was the moment I stopped pretending. "I already have one." A long beat. "Langford?" he asked, voice suddenly brittle. "I'm not at liberty to discuss that," I said, deliberately echoing the corporate phrases they loved so much. "But you should probably revise your pipeline estimates. And your access rights." He didn't respond. "Good night, Bill." I hung up. No slamming. No shouting. Just a clean click that felt more final than any resignation letter I ever wrote. A minute later, my inbox pinged. Langford CTO. Draft contract. Subject line. Foundations, not optics. They'd offered a role. Direct. No midlemen. No chat. Just me, my build, and the freedom to finish what I started without interference from trust fund toddlers playing CTO. I didn't smile. Not really. But I did allow myself one moment. Just one. To imagine Chad's face when the news dropped. They thought I was the demo girl. Turns out, I was the product. The press release dropped at 9:07 a.m. on a Tuesday, with all the clinical precision of a guillotine. Langford Systems has formally terminated all contractual engagement with Stratton Consulting, citing structural incompetence, critical misrepresentation of development resources, and repeated failure to meet integration standards. No fluff. No sugar. Just surgical language that made it clear this wasn't a mutual uncoupling. It was an exorcism. I didn't need to read the rest. I already knew what was coming. 15 minutes later, a second release hit the wires. Langford Systems is proud to announce a new strategic technology partnership with Origin Layer, a boutique data architecture firm led by Mason Rudd. No one at Stratton had ever asked my full name for the slides. They always called me the backend dev or our engineer. But there it was, top line, bold, impossible to miss. Mason Rudd, founder and chief architect. Origin Layer wasn't flashy. It wasn't backed by VC cash or glossy marketing. It was me, a few engineers I'd met over the years who knew what it meant to build in the dark, and the code I'd carried with me like a spine. We didn't need an office, just access. Langford gave us both. That same morning, Stratton's internal memo leaked. Chad had been realigned into a non-client-facing role. Rumor had it his new title was Internal Workflow Strategist, which translated loosely to managing spreadsheets no one reads. As for his father, the CEO, taking time off to focus on family. The board didn't even pretend to hide it. They needed a scapegoat, and the old man provided too. By noon, my LinkedIn was flooded. Recruiters, journalists, old colleagues crawling out of the woodwork to say they always believed in me. I didn't respond to any of them. Instead, I sat down and wrote an email to my new team. 7 names. 3 time zones. All people who knew how it felt to be passed over, talked over, used for your skill and dismissed for your silence. Subject line: let's build this the right way. We scheduled a kickoff that evening. No sweets. No speeches. Just shared screens and raw code. The way it should have always been. At 4:32 p.m., a message popped up from an unknown number. Just 3 words. You really won. No name attached. But I didn't need one. I typed back. No. I just stopped letting you pretend I hadn't. Then I closed the thread, turned back to the Langford schematic, and started rewriting the ingestion layer from scratch. Not because it was broken, but because now, I could build it exactly the way I wanted. No more handoffs. No more optics. This time, I wasn't just in the room. I was drawing the floor plan. The new Langford tech floor was nothing like the gleaming labs and glass-walled shrines you see in startup vanity photos. It was quiet, clean, efficient. The kind of space built by people who gave a damn about functionality over flash. The desks weren't color-coded, there were no ping-pong tables, and no one handed out slogans like party favors. What we had instead was uptime, precision, and a culture that ran on earned trust, not inherited titles. My office was tucked in the corner. Mason Rudd, chief architect. Not carved in brass. Just a matte black nameplate beside the door. That was enough. The people who needed to know knew. Inside, the lights were low. A whiteboard across one wall still held the notes from last week's architecture sprint. Most of them mine, some from others. Collaboration felt real now. Not performative. No peacocking. Just minds in sync. And behind my desk, mounted in a simple black frame, hung a screenshot. 3 words, frozen forever in white text on a dark background. Missing key signature. Below it, etched in silver. Know your build. Langford's idea, not mine. A subtle reminder of what happens when you strip power from the people who actually hold it. When you chase flash and forget the foundation. My phone buzzed once on the desk. Then again. The caller ID glowed. Stratton Inc. I didn't move. The room was still. They'd already tried everything. Emails, backchannel intros, even a vague apology drafted by their new general counsel. I read it once. Didn't respond. Now they were trying direct lines. Desperate voices disguised as opportunities. I let the phone ring until it stopped. Then turned it over so the screen faced down. Outside my office, I could hear the soft clatter of keys, a few low voices discussing endpoint flags and container orchestration. No one was raising their voice. No one was performing. It was the kind of room I used to imagine when I coded late at night, wondering if it was possible to build something without having to explain why you deserve to be in the chair. Turns out it is. You just have to take it. And when the ones who overlooked you come calling, let it ring. They wanted a face for the pitch. Turns out the product had one all along.